Okay, so let's get started, and maybe some other people will come. But this is great. So thanks for coming. I'm Greg Palin. I'm the director, and this is Liz, our program manager. So we're kind of the two people in the central part of booking, but we've got a lot of other people that are working hard on building our collaborative, that our collective. We'll talk more about that. Also joined by Michelle Cantos, who's a peer artist leader, and Annabelle Lamb, who's in our novel incubator this year, and we're very excited to have them here. And Tunji's in our, Tunji was in our incubator, memoir incubator last year, and the book revision lab earlier in, I don't even know what year is it? Is this year?
That's correct.
That's right. So you're still working on your memoir, and we have
Yes.
we have a Slack channel for the alums that Tunji's been popping back into, which is we're really excited to see. So we're just gonna talk a little bit about the program, and then we're gonna open it up to Michelle, and if Tunji's still here, and Annabelle, to just talk a little bit about their experiences. But we really definitely want to just talk about what you guys have questions about, and just make this as interactive as possible. So if Liz and I are talking and you want to ask something, just let us know, and or the panel, and hopefully we can answer your questions and get you excited about being part of our program. So why did we start this? I mean, we did this in 2020. We started Project Right Now 10 years ago, and that was a writing center that was physical, right? So we were all in person in the Jersey Shore, and that was wonderful. And then 2019 came, and or 2020, and we had to go virtual. So one good thing that came out of that for us was that we just had started a book writing program. So we had a small group of people who came out of our writing community who wanted to commit themselves to writing memoirs or novels. And a number of us had MFAs, a number of us have been to workshops over the years, but I think we all had this kind of feeling that they're great if you can do it, but they have some what I think is pretty serious downsides to them. One of them is the expense. They're very expensive. They typically take you out of your life. I did a low residency program, which was great, but I went away for 2 weeks twice a year, which was tough on my wife and leaving the kids. And it's also the expense was really hard, and a lot of the people took out loans, and then I worked with really good mentors, and it was great. But then the program ended, and so we had this kind of hard stop. So, and I went there with a novel in mind, and I really hoped to get it done and ready to get published. And then, for a number of reasons, they said, well, we kind of work on short stories here. We're more focused on that. And which is great. You learn craft, but I really was committed to writing books, and that's what I wanted to do. So, and I also thought that it was a shame that the community wasn't really designed to support you after the program was done. So that's one of the things that I think we want to remedy with this community. The other thing is that those communities really focus a lot on craft, and which is really important to learn your techniques and learn about point of view and how to do things you want to do in your book. But I think in general, even a bigger challenge is process. So how do you actually get it done? How do you actually make time in our really tough lives and difficult lives with work and family obligations and everything else we've going on? And even more, that's just a lot of psychological challenges that we all have when we write books. There's a lot of self-doubt, like, why am I doing this? What's the point? Why do we create art in this crazy world? It doesn't have the kind of value that most of our culture puts on activity, where things have to be productive and you have to have some sort of return on that. And the other thing is, I thought there was something about, going to workshops and different programs where you'd have it was kind of a mixed bag. So depending on what your workshop leader or mentor happened to do, some of them had one approach, some of them had another approach. And that's fine to be exposed to different points of view, and you can learn a lot through everybody's different approach to writing. But in general, there was kind of something missing where there is best practices to actually do these things. And most of these programs didn't really help their instructors learn that and kind of have this overall approach. So one of the things that we really emphasized, there's people like Matt Bell, which I always cite as someone who's really good at this, is that instead of saying we've got the solution, what we try to do is pull out all the good solutions that we as a community can find and kind of crowdsource them, put it into the curriculum and keep improving it. So that's one thing we're really committed to, is that once you join a program, we keep learning, we keep coming up with approaches that we think are valuable. And then if something new appears, you're like, wow, that's great, let's try that. And that's kind of something. I came out of the software business, and that was like really something that we really committed to that. It's like constant improvement, constant like, okay, we're not going to invent everything ourselves. Let's keep drawing on what's best, the best practices. So that was kind of like the overall idea of what we started here. And I think one of the other big things is that there's, as writers, there's kind of this sense, and I did this when I went for my MFA, that I'd go to the MFA and they tell me, you're a writer, you're good, you're welcome into our community, we've kind of given you the blessing. And I think that's just kind of a little bit of a distraction, and it's something that that kind of takes us out of owning our art. So I think the real thing is that instead of kind of looking outside of yourself for the solutions, whether you're a good writer or not, or whether this particular project is working, really what we want to do is pull that back into ourselves and say, we're the artist. And that's really the artist's job, is to use your taste and kind of just what pleases you. And I think but that's hard. Again, it's in our culture. We're kind of like looking outside of ourselves. Is this worthwhile? What can we do? And I think it's really helpful to have a community to keep reminding you that you're the artist. Your vision is what we're trying to help you realize. So let's kind of keep reminding ourselves that. Let's not like look outside of ourselves to a guru to say, oh, you're wonderful, you're one of us now. And that's kind of an illusion. And I think, I've been trying to do this in various ways for a long time, and I really tried. Part of me so analytic, and I'm kind of like this business guy, and part of me is like this artist. And I've used this business side of myself a lot in my writing, which is kind of inappropriate. You're kind of like, I can engineer the solution. And, that's not really the case. Every project's different. And so anyway, so that's kind of where the overall scope, but just to boil it down into in the essence, we really want to become much less expensive, more effective alternate to an MFA, but the same level of professionalism. So I'll let Liz talk about this. Well, I'll just throw it to you, Liz, right now. But Liz just recently applied to a post-MFA program up at Vermont College, and they required you to have an MFA to get in. And so, Liz, you tell what happened.
Yeah, so it was in Burlington, Vermont, which was one of my favorite cities, and it was a week-long conference. And so I was like, oh, I want to go to this, but it was for postgraduates only. And if you didn't have an MFA, you could apply. So I wrote a letter, describing all the booking programs I've been in. I've been in the Memoir Incubator, and then I took Book Revision Lab, and then I took a submission program, and I got a response right away that said, clearly the programs that you've been in are an alternate MFA, and we'd love to have you as part of the program. And I will say, when I went feeling a little nervous, everybody's there, has their MFA, am I going to be able to cut it? And I totally felt comfortable. I'd been reading all the same books, everybody, even maybe even more some. I'd been submitting more than some of the MFA graduates. And I felt like these programs had really prepared me, to be a part of the literary community for sure.
Yeah, so that was really a nice validation, because we've had this idea, and we're still in this kind of early stage of the process. We'll be celebrating 5 years in January. But as most of you know, like a book is a long-term process. So kind of we're hoping that within the next 5 to 6, 7, 8 years, we'll start to see the fruition of this in a number of different ways. We've seen early indications. We've had 55 novels and memoirs that have been drafted, and the people who have made those deadlines really feel a sense of satisfaction and kind of a life, like something like, I've always wanted to do that. And I'll let the panel kind of, you guys talk about that. I know some of you are kind of in the throes of the deadline right now, so that might be a different perspective. But and we've also revised and shared 181 revised drafts, and and many of the writers are actively querying. Some people have self-published, some people have done hybrid publications, and a number of people have gotten full manuscript requests. The challenge with agents, it's a very long-term process. So say you spend a couple years writing your book, it could be another year or two until you actually get some connection. And so we're kind of committed again to that long haul, trying to get as many good prospects into our pipeline to kind of show that we can complete this entire cycle effectively. So I wanted to kind of open it up to the panel. Maybe I'll ask Tunji first, because I know he might have to jump off the quickest. But I just wanted to kind of get you guys' take on what brought you here, and perhaps maybe why you thought this was a good fit, and how did you feel after you started that program? So Tunji, what do you think?
Hello, everyone. So before I came to the year-long program, Memoir Inc., I was at the Other Writers program, which, I didn't have anything bad, against them. It was fine for, I will call it 2 semesters. But, I know the way I work. I'm not organized. I'm not focused. So I knew that I needed a long-term, that is a full stretch of a program where I'm going to be held accountable. Of course, then, I'm an adult, so it's going to be my own accountability. In any case, just being part of a year-long program was attractive to me. And I looked at the syllabus, and there are prescribed set of readings to start with, exercises to start with, and then the writing began. And the way the syllabus was set up, we were supposed to complete a certain number of words per I think every other week. That is not to say I followed that. I didn't follow the prescribed set of words we were supposed to be writing. I did some writing, again, like Greg said, I put in my own style. And in the beginning, when they said we should have finished 50,000 words, just as Greg said, I attended a session like this 2 years ago. I thought, oh my gosh, how am I going to do that? But stick with the program, following it, in my own style. By the end of that full year program, I ended up with 45,000 words, which was still short of 50,000 by 5,000. Some people are over that. But what impressed me about my work was that I was able to start from the beginning and complete a full manuscript, however short, by 5,000. But I took the following class, the revision memoir revision class, which was again another 5 months or so. And in doing that revision, I was able to revise what I did in the first year-long program. And I didn't push it, but by the time I finished the revision class, my word count number was 55,000 words. So to put a long story short, make a long story short, I'm impressed at myself that I was able to complete something. Okay, because I'm still working full time. I lost my job, but no, again, I'm starting a new one very soon, which is great. But I'm still going to be working full time. I'm going to be writing the memoir. I think the next 6 months, I need to, since now I have a little bit of stability in the career-wise, think I will be able to get back on my, daily, weekly writing, revising until I come to a point where I feel I'm ready to submit. I missed the submission class this past August, because my mind was someplace else, my energy was someplace else. But no, I'm looking forward to another short submission program I could join maybe now or maybe early part of 2025. So, all good. Thanks.
Thanks.
Thanks, Tunji. That's awesome. So one of the things we're going to do too for you and others who are kind of alums is do a monthly kind of accountability group. So that's one thing we're going to do starting in January. It's something that you might be interested in as well. So
sounds good.
What about you, Annabelle? I want to hear your story. I've been hearing so much about you, and I've said hi to you in passing, but I'd love to hear more.
Yeah, I mean, I can't tell my sort of book ink story without talking about Michelle, who is the best. I actually met Michelle at a local, it was like an organic tie-dyeing workshop. She happened to be this at like a boutique. And while we were chatting there, I started talking her ear off and I found out that she just moved into my development and we were neighbors. And so she mentioned while we were talking that first day that she was involved with this program, and I have a background in writing. I studied writing in college. I have my master's in literature, but I wasn't so persuaded for an MFA. I actually had a professor in undergrad who talked me out of pursuing an MFA and into pursuing just like a kind of run-of-the-mill master's instead, because she felt kind of failed by her program.
Hmm.
And so because of that, I just kind of put that aside. And then due to like other sort of personal things in life, I just hadn't been involved in writing. So it felt very serendipitous for Michelle to tell me about this. And so I joined the novel incubator this year. I started in January with 0 words, and my novel is due on Thursday, and I have 72,000 words on the page right now, which is crazy. So I can't believe that. I'm gonna have a finished manuscript. Theoretically, it's finished today, but I will have my tinkering finished to go out to my team by Thursday, and that feels insane to be able to say that I got a story out in that amount of time. And I can't speak highly enough about the community that's built. So not just the fact that my now best friend, who I'm obsessed with and lives like a couple buildings over, is in that, but really just like the community of the people who are in this, the people in, the Slack group, and specifically in the novel incubator, like these people are my friends now. A lot of people are local to the Red Bank area, so I see them in real life at the cafe, but so nobody at FOMO, we started a virtual writing cafe. So, we set it up, everybody jumps into Zoom. We don't really talk much. We write while we're there. But it's so nice to have that experience and just really feel so supported. And I mean, even from, reflecting on previous creative writing workshops I've been in, my level of excitement and joy at sharing my work is like exponentially increased because I know the incredibly skilled level of feedback I'm going to get, but also the positive attitude, which is a huge thing. So honestly, I can't recommend this enough. I feel like I almost stumbled into it because of Michelle. She like opened the portal for me. But I cannot believe that in less than a year, I have a completed first draft of a novel. That's insane. And I did not think I could do it. So I just want to let everybody know it's possible. The community is there for you. And like, I'm beyond grateful, particularly to Michelle, because she was my gateway, but to the whole booking team. And, I really can't speak highly enough. And I will be in that book revision lab. You'll see me there this January. So
That's awesome. That sounds so great. I'm so happy about that.
no, thank you, Greg.
I mean, it's like, I feel like my work's done. I'm all like, I'm done. It is really something just to get these people. And it is putting your work out there is really tough, and I think it depends on, what's nice about the incubators, I think, is that, you kind of get to know people for a long time. So by the time you actually do share, you're kind of ready, you guys trust each other, you're on the same side, you're rooting for each other. And that's different from like being thrown into a workshop and you're like, we're sharing in the first day or something. So Michelle, I want to hear from you. You're kind of now the next stage in this chain. So,
oh gosh. Well, so I'm Michelle, the Michelle Annabelle's talking about. Yeah, it was really cool to start the program with someone I was just meeting and to have a friendship. And we're both, we write together a lot. But I'm actually also holding one of my podmates' memoir, and you can see I've got notes and Post-its. I'm 1/3 of the book. I've read 1/3 of the book, and I could cry right now. It's so amazing to see one of my peers complete it and have her work. It's such an honor to hold it in print and to give feedback. And I'm noticing how careful I want to be. I want to give the best feedback and support and encouragement and highlight what's working really well so she can do more of that. While still remembering it's a first draft. We're all nervous. We're all rushing to the finish line. She was the first brave soul to go. The rest of us have a little more time. And so being mindful of that. So just wanted to give that example of how in this community your work is treated. It's precious. It's truly an honor to get to read it at this stage because it's pretty raw. It is the first manuscript. The goal is just to finish. It doesn't have to be perfect. But even at that stage, it's beautiful. The work is beautiful. It's amazing to get into the mind of another writer so early on into their process. And I really hope this writer will continue editing. But my story is I've tried to write the memoir that I'm finishing now for years, and I did it alone. I tried it alone. You know, I bought different books and tools and followed different methods. If anyone's familiar with National Writing Month, where like all of November people sit down and write. I did that over the course of almost 4 months once. What came out was a novel that was okay, but it wasn't the true story. And I tried once before, and it was a more academic piece, and it was just difficult. It was difficult. It was kind of sad because at the end I was like, I'm tired. I'm actually truly burnt out from the writing process and from writing too quickly, too much alone. And what happened is I actually have never gone back to those manuscripts until this year as research for my current manuscript. But I think it's the book writing process is a years-long journey. It's difficult. And this program has been really special in that they provided structure. There was a lot of lessons and tools that really helped me along the way to make sure that the writing was better and that I wasn't doing it alone. And I will have to submit in a couple of weeks. It's going to be amazing to have feedback because no one's ever read my work previously. You know, it's pretty unnerving to devote so much time to something and for no one to read it. And I guess I could have people read it, but you'd have to pay for it. And that kind of, you know, is kind of a different process, perhaps more biased. So yeah, I'm really excited to have my memoir hopefully be 50,000 words. It's a little rough around the edges, but it's great. I'm excited. I've learned so much, and I got the opportunity to also be one of the co-pals, so like the co-teacher with Liz. And that was a great experience as well. I think what's really cool is there's a lot of opportunities to be as involved as you want in this organization. And yeah, I think what's most special is that we're book writers here. I think I haven't even considered an MFA since joining because I can't imagine paying that much money. And from a lot of what I hear, it doesn't lead to a book right away or that community. And maybe in the future, but right now I think my goal is satisfied. And again, I'm in a week, just imagine this is mine in like a couple weeks. It'll be something like that. So that's it. I don't know what else to say.
That's great, Michelle. I appreciate it. And Annabelle too, and Tunji. I think Tunji had to go. But that's awesome. So, I mean, I think you guys get a sense of that. And I think so, you know, what we do with both of the incubators and the book revision lab is we just try to provide shape and structure and a curriculum, and really the community is what makes it work, right? So it's everybody bringing their perspective and their passion and kind of commitment, and also sharing their doubts and challenges. And so it's, you know, the facilitators are great. That we call them peer artist leaders. So we really try to say we're all peers. So the peer artists are working on their own book, like going, you know, like Michelle and Liz, they both did the memoir incubator this year, and they're actually writing their own memoirs during that process. And I've done that. I've led the novel incubator twice and the book revision lab. I'm doing a book revision lab now, and it's different. You know, I've taught classes in the past. I've taught at college, and it's just different when you're actually in it. You know, because it's kind of like, no matter how much you can say, you know, say you wrote something in the past, or you had an MFA or something, but unless you're actually sweating it out with the people, it's just kind of hard to we put some of that stuff behind us. And it's just like, I've been doing this for a while, and I read a lot about it, and I think a lot about it. And but I just like, some days I just am so consumed with doubts. I think it's a total waste of time. I mean, and you really get sad, and you got to get that sense of despondency. And I think the thing is but if you have people who are rooting for you, and they're kind of expressing things, and then, you know, and there to kind of knock around ideas with, it just kind of helps you. I mean, Allison Theobald, who's a peer artist leader who helped me with the first incubator, she kind of helped co-found it. she used to use this as describing, she used to be a competitive swimmer, and she said, you know, she when she was swimming her own races, she'd be like, okay, but if she was swimming a relay, she'd always feel a little bit more energy. And I think there's this unusual thing that happens in these groups that you kind of feel like their books are your books, and you kind of feel like, they're not, it's like they're the director, but you're somehow part of the production. And I think I felt it very viscerally in both times I went through the incubators, because people would pop in one day and say, I was thinking about your book. And then all of a sudden they would give you this little insight that, like, whether it was a book to read or a movie to watch or just a little idea, and you're just like, wow, where did that come from? And we have this thing, our mascot is an octopus, because our first incubator was like, it's kind of like all the brains are working at once. And, octopuses have 9 brains. So we used to kind of talk about that phenomena, like the octopus effect. And so, like if we're working on our book and we put up our little satellite to get ideas from the ether, right? But if you have all these people in your community, they're putting up the satellite too. And so whether an idea comes directly to me, like I'm walking the dog and all of a sudden I get a good idea, or Michelle or Annabelle or Liz or Tunji say, hey, Greg, what about that? I've had comments with people that have changed everything like that. And they're just little. And I just think there's something about people who care about your work and are connected to you creatively. It's just kind of like our satellites are bigger. And they're more fun too. I mean, I took a theater class as an undergraduate, and I was just like, God, why would I want to be a writer? Be in a theater, because you can actually work with people and collaborate and do all this great stuff. Writers is such a solitary activity, but this actually, it's not quite, putting on a play, but it really does have some of that. It has some of that kind of collaborative feel. So just briefly, Liz and I will kind of talk, we're going to ask the panel for a couple more insights as well, but I just wanted to give you just general take on the program. So both the memoir incubator and the novel incubator both come in phases. So the first one is that, as some of the panelists have mentioned, it's a 12-month program, and the goal is to write a 50,000 word manuscript. So you start at the end of January, and the goal is to start sharing in the September and October timeframe. There was a bunch of different phases. The first phase is, we call it conception or story development. And that's when you basically start to gather the information that's kind of the raw material for your story. Who are your characters? What's your plot? We use something called beats, which is kind of something that screenwriters use that has become very much more well accepted in the novel and memoir writing community. But it's this basically saying there are these standard turning points in any manuscript. So there's the setup, the inciting incident, there's the midpoint, there's rising action. It's basically this Freytag's pyramid. That's another way of looking at it, where it's a rising conflict to a climax and a resolution. So the beats are points along that way. Turns out that they're very useful when you're designing structure, because it'll help you have kind of guideposts and signs to go out. So we learn about those concepts. We learn about story elements. We do a lot of work on doing kind of journaling about the story, about the characters, about the world we're building, the setting. And then we start to put together a rough outline. There's a lot of this is kind of something that we're offering you options for you to do without trying to be too prescriptive, because we know every artist is different. And some people, there's this plotter and pantser idea. So plotters are people who outline and they follow the outline, and then pantsers, they just kind of wing it, right? So you kind of do more of a literary approach. You follow your muse and see. And we really think that it's good to know both. I mean, it's good to know what it's like to do some outlining. It's good to know what it's like to do beats. I mean, generally, I'm more of probably of a pantser, because I came from more of a literary tradition, not as opposed to like a genre tradition. But I really learned how valuable outlining can be, and you actually, it's not only before the manuscript, but also afterward, after you do a draft. So we'll talk a little bit more about that. So that's the first phase, and then the next phase I'm going to just hand off to Liz for that to describe the next phase, which is drafting.
Yeah, so after you journal and you do all the prompts and you get your ideas, churning, that's when you start typing it up and creating your scenes. That's my favorite phase. I struggle through the journaling but getting to writing the scenes is great. And it's sort of like we have a weekly word count, 2,500 words, but sort of like what Tunji said, like you think you're not going to do it, or maybe there are some weeks you don't hit that goal, but like miraculously, if you stay on track and you're showing up at the sessions and you're connecting on Slack with the writers, like it's amazing to see your word count go up and up, and there's a lot of different, where, like Greg said, we give you all these different ways of doing it, and then you find the system that works best for you. Like some people are daily writers, they get out 500 words every day, and that's what works for them. They have to do it that way. Me, I'm a binge writer, so I don't do it every day. I used to beat myself up about that, like I'm not a real writer, but then I realized, no, on the weekends I get a bulk of my words in. So that's how I ended up doing the drafting. And that's when we're putting our scenes together. We're learning some about craft in our sessions. We'll have like, let's talk about dialogue, and let's learn about setting. What's cool about the incubators, if there's if there's ever a question that comes up on Slack, like, well, I'm having trouble with point of view, or we can say, oh, let's discuss that. And oftentimes we pull people from our community who have knowledge on that particular craft element, and they can give us a little talk. So that's really cool to get some different input from other writers. What else do I say about the drafting, Greg?
So no, I think that's great. I mean, maybe you can talk about resistance a little bit.
Oh, resistance.
And
Yes.
maybe we could draw in our panel on that a little bit as well.
Resistance. She is a sneaky person. So yeah, we start off like really talking about resistance and learning about ourselves and discussing like how does it come out, and you'll be we do a lot of exercise so we can recognize it in ourselves, because you might not even realize it, that what your experience is resistance. But so I mean, that's what's so great about this community, is that you can share things, and someone might say, I'm scrapping this whole idea and I'm gonna start a new book, and we're like, people like, wait, that's for your resistance, or and that's what's so great about having this community. Before I joined the incubator, I did a lot of writing. I had a lot of scenes and chapters, but until I joined the memoir incubator, I wasn't able to pull it all together into a full book. I needed that community. I needed the accountability, sort of like Tunji said, and you have these deadlines. I need to hand my manuscript off to somebody. So I'm not going to let that person down. I said I was going to do it. I need to have a manuscript to them. So that's how we work through resistance. It's really, like Greg said, it's like the community, the energy you get from the community helps you overpower all the sneaky way resistance, tries to stop you.
Yeah, I think that's what it's interesting, because we have this book, it's called The War of Art, which we read, and I guess we're going to do more excerpts because there's some kind of dicey parts of it, but it would even just introducing to that, to your vocabulary, the idea of resistance, which is not something they talk to me about at my MFA program. I mean, you kind of do it in a general sense, but it really is insidious. I mean, you can really, and say you got a handle on it. Like my good friend Kathleen, who's in this program, she's like, how do you get yourself to write every day? Like I get up and I do my reading, and then I do some errands, and I do this other stuff. It's like, Kathleen, you've got to make the writing the first thing, right? So you got to make, and then, come up with a reward system. And she's like, oh, like we've been friends. We did our MFAs together. We've been doing this for a long time. And you're just like, but then and then say you do have a good routine, and all of a sudden something happens to oh, well, I could just do that now. It's not a big deal. And all of a sudden you're drifting away from your routine. And it's just like, how did that happen? I used to turn off my email when I wrote, right? It's pretty logical, right? And like, especially I'm trying to keep booking going, and Liz and I have some stuff going on, but I'm like, okay, if I'm going to write for an hour, I'm going to turn off my email. And it's like, then I forget to do it. And then all of a sudden and so I think it's just
Also, Liz is emailing him in the morning and he's getting annoyed. Yeah.
yeah, Liz is actually on the call, so I have to be careful. But it's just one of those things. And I think if the guy who wrote The War of Art, Stephen Pressfield, he just kind of says it never goes away and it's always going to keep changing. So it's not like you're ever going to get a handle on it. There's always going to be, like, he describes it in an interesting way, like any creative act, when you're making art, or starting a company or wanting to do something new for yourself, there's always this counterforce in the universe that's pushing back against it. Whatever that is, and it's this, like, we could try to name it, we could try to get a handle on it, but it's going to keep pushing. Like, we're going to try to achieve, we're going to try to set aspirations, and there's something pushing back. And I think that's why it's so important to have a community. Is like, I was thinking about Evelyn this summer. She just, like, I don't know why I'm doing this. She was very vulnerable and just kind of sharing that on Slack. And I just thought that was wonderful because everybody kind of rallied toward her support and kind of gave their perspective. And so, Michelle, I want to hear what you think about this and your experience with the Resistance this year.
Yes. Yeah, I think a big portion of the first phase of the class, there is it's really cool that we focus on our mindset and the psychology of writing a little bit, because yeah, I did not write today, but I was like, oh, but I answered Greg's email about writing, so that counts. And and that sounds like, oh, well, she's busy, but no, I wasn't. I had plenty of time, but it's really scary to write, even though I'm almost done. Every time you show up to write, it is terrifying. It's, your ego takes a hit or at least for me, every time I sit down, it takes a hit. And I feel much better after I write. But if I don't write for 2 days or don't check in on Slack with my group, I start feeling anxious again. And the more anxious I feel, the less I want to write, the more busy work I find, the more I completely redo my apartment and, bother Annabelle to go do something instead of writing. So the mindset exploration that we do at the beginning is important. It's helpful. And I think it's really helpful to be on. So I don't know if everyone's used Slack, but it's just like a instant messaging platform that we all use to stay in touch. And we are required to check in daily. And even if you don't write every day, you have to check in and say, hey, I didn't write today, but I read a few pages. At least what I like to do was to say, I think tomorrow I'm going to edit because I'm not feeling excited about the writing, but editing will feel good and it'll get some momentum going. And so it's nice to kind of say that to the group, and not that anyone's actually watching me in my home, but I have so much respect for the other writers, and I see that they're showing up. I see that some of them aren't showing up, and it, makes me really sad because they're excellent writers. So then I get motivated that I can't kind of let that happen. So it's great. It's great to have people checking in on you. It's great to have 10 plus people rooting for you. It's great when we don't share our drafts until toward the end of the program, but we share bits and bobs here and there. And it's really wonderful when they read your work and validate. And now you kind of owe it to the group to finish. So you're not just doing it for you anymore. You started this journey and signed up for it. And yeah, so the mindset piece, I think it's really helpful. Like, I tend to be someone who can sit down and get things done, even if it's over the course of a long time. But the difference of doing it here is that it's a little more joyful and it's exciting and there's more meaning versus doing it alone. And if we're all writers, we're all probably a little more sensitive. And yeah, it's just great to have some fun, to have people rooting for you who aren't your friends and family, who already think you're awesome, and who can't really tell if you're a good writer. They just know you talk a lot or don't talk enough. So yeah, that mindset piece is really cool. And you've just reminded me, Greg, that we should bring that up again at this end of stage as we're finishing the course. because it's ever present. Like I have 44,000 words. I'm about to submit some of my best writing, and I'm still dragging myself to write. I feel great when I'm doing it, but I still feel this nervousness when I haven't written in a day or two. So anyway.
I think that's a really good, I mean, I do, it's like we use the ego to kind of do everything, get things done. We're always busy, to-dos, we gotta feel productive. And then it really is that shift. We gotta use a different part of our brain. And like, the only way to do it is to sit down, and then it's painful. The ego says, I don't want you to do that. I want to go, but then eventually, if you stay there long enough, you can kind of feel it. It almost goes into this different mode for me anyway. It's like, I'm like, oh my gosh, I have this much time left to read, right? And then all of a sudden I'm going past it because something changed, right?
Oh yeah, can I add that we are all required to do, or the suggestion is 500 words a day, and then we check in on Slack. But I think most of us end up doing like 1,500 words, 2,000, 3,000 in one sitting. And then maybe we'll take a day off and read a little bit. So I know it's, everyone's a little different. The daily writing is, I think, the ideal, but life happens. And what we find is that when students sit down and push through resistance, they end up writing entire chapters in one sitting, and kind of writing that high for a couple of days. And it's really wonderful to see students who are, or fellow writers who are not feeling confident when they started out, finally sit down and say, oh, I wrote an entire chapter. I've been talking about writing for years, especially in memoir. A lot of people have stories they've wanted to tell for a lifetime, and it's all in their head, and they've thought it through, and they've got all these anecdotes, and they just need to sit down for half an hour, for an hour, for 20 minutes. Some of our writers who are moms and had, to do the pickup and drop off and all of those, had all of these small interruptions throughout the day. A lot of them just wrote on their phones or in a notepad until they could get a moment to sit down alone, right? I know Liz is constantly interrupted, and constantly was interrupted this summer, and didn't even have like a private office, but you found ways to kind of make it happen. And I know she's typing in the middle of just very early in the morning. And the structure, the accountability checkpoints we have, the mindset work, it all leads to you developing a writing practice, whether it's daily or a couple times a week. And you kind of learn like, oh, I can usually produce 2,000 words every time I sit, and then build the rest of your year of writing around that. So that's something I'm taking from the program, is I'm now a consistent writer. I know how much I can write. I know how quickly I edit. And I worked as a magazine editor before, and, have some bylines and have some experiences, but nothing has taught me writing like this, like the consistency of doing it over the course of a year, checking in. And it's not as intensive as an MFA or college or anything. We meet every 2 weeks for 2 hours, and, the homework is to write and to read a bit. And all of the learning is coming from within, from the practice of writing and rereading it, and knowing that my peers are going to read it. So it's a really, really, if you're somebody who learns by doing, which I very much am, this is exactly that's the kind of environment this is.
That's great. Annabelle, do you have any thoughts about this? Like your personal resistance and kind of getting through it to get things done?
Yeah, I mean, I resisted writing for several years after I graduated college, before I got back into it again. But I have to say, it's something my personal life hack is I work from home. When I want to procrastinate work, I write. When I want to procrastinate writing, I work. So I've actually never had a more productive year in my office either. But I would have to say that something that's been very moving, at least to see or to experience, is you're talking to people from all different walks of life. Like the amount of diversity in this program is incredible as well, which I think is incredibly important, first of all, for having different readers. But also, you're making friends with all different kinds of people. And sometimes hearing that, there's this incredible woman in the Novel Incubator she's an older lady. And I'm like, if she's getting, doing her whole thing and she's getting words on the page, I have literally no excuse. So it's nice to have that kind of be inspired by the people around you, and kind of see in a very real way how people are sort of combating resistance. And I feel like it's definitely a team sport. Fighting resistance is a team sport.
I think we just got a slogan there.
I
Liz.
know, I was like, can I write that down? Fighting resistance is a team sport. Love it.
That's awesome. That's great. So this is great. So we got the, you know, we do the concept stuff, we do the drafting, which is kind of the you know, and I think as Michelle and Annabelle really nicely illustrated, it's really like building that writing practice, building this kind of the confidence to keep going. It's like I'm training for a half marathon, you know, and it's just like it's an interesting thing. Like big things just take a long time. You know, you got to keep chunking away. You got to make your plans. You got to so it's not like sprints. You got to like, okay, this is going to be take a while, but it's very satisfying when you can get something, you know, a long-term project done. So you go through that, and then we get that 50,000 words together, and then we do what we call a reading round. So that's when we divide up into groups of 3. And then we basically share our work. Liz, do you want to talk about that a little bit?
Sure, yeah, because we're about to embark on the reading rounds in the incubators. Yeah, so we, you know, break up into pods depending on, you know, how many people are in each, you know, program. And then, you know, we get assigned, you pick your deadline. So, you know, we read somebody's manuscript okay, sorry, start over again. Okay, the reading rounds. You have, you know, a group of like 3 or 4 other readers in your pod, and you meet together, and you just, you know, whoever's closest to finish will be the person who goes first, and everybody picks their deadlines. You send your manuscript to your readers. We prefer the hard copy, of the manuscript. And they get 2 weeks to read it, and they read it carefully. We provide specific guidelines for the reading rounds and a handbook for you to fill out. And as I think Greg sort of touched upon before, we're about positive feedback. You know, this isn't criticism. We're not, you know, prescriptive, telling you how your story should be. It's really showing the author where the heat is, what's interesting. You know, you can certainly point out points where you're confused, you know, maybe where your interest waned a little bit. But our goal is to really, we believe every writer has it. They can do this. They can make a manuscript the best it can be, and we just need to encourage them. So the readers read and comment on the manuscript, and then we meet together and discuss the book. And it's so cool. I've been through this back in 2022 and through the book revision lab. And when you meet together with these people who have read your book, they talk about it as if it were a book club, you know, and you just sort of sit there and listen to these other readers like discuss your characters and your storyline. And it's really cool. It's really an amazing experience to hear them talk about it. And they're all excited and, you know, talking about it with each other. And then you get a chance to ask them any questions, if, you know, find out more about their experience reading it. And then they mail you back the hard copy of the manuscript with their written comments on it, with, you know, along with this workbook that we have. So nobody needs any like copy edit. We had somebody worried, I don't have any copy editing experience. That's not the point of the reading rounds. It's really, we want the impression of the reader as they're reading your book, you know, where they got excited and what they're interested in. So it's a great experience. And then, you know, the next reader, the same thing happens for all the authors in the pod, get to have their whole manuscripts read and discussed.
Yeah, it's really exciting. I think, you know, we did this thing like where you go to Staples and you do it and you print it and you take a picture of yourself with the manuscript, and it's like it never gets old. I think I don't know how many reading rounds I've done now, but it must be, I don't know, 6, 7, 8 or something in the last several years. And you're just like, it's amazing. It's amazing to kind of, you know, like to live in your head for so long with all these characters that you don't talk to anybody about. And all of a sudden, or a memoir, and you're like, people are like talking about it like it's real, right? It comes out of your head. And Liz emphasized the positive aspect of it. There's something that I tapped into early on that really inspired me. And it's like kind of, I think, a zeitgeisty thing too, where, you know, kind of old school like the Iowa Writers Workshop that came out of the 50s, they tried to tear you down, like, okay, we're going to tear you down and kind of make you a real writer. And that was kind of like a masculine patriarchal thing. And we know what we're doing. And, people come out of those programs pretty beaten up. And lots of people have horror stories about MFAs and workshops and things like that. And I think over the years that's getting better. And overall, people are getting more enlightened about that. But what really got me interested in is that I heard about positive psychology, which was something that this guy Martin Seligman at Penn founded. But it's just this idea that instead of focusing on your weaknesses, which is a lot of psychology, you try to fix your weaknesses, and this is more like you cultivate strengths. So you really just kind of you all get good at reading and spotting strengths and emphasizing them to say, wow, you really moved me there. Or this character really came to life, or this turning point really, I was really eager to hear what happened next. And I think the thing is, people are like, well, I want you to tell me the truth. I want you to tell me what's bad and so I can fix it. And it's like, it's just not how it works effectively. You actually will you'll be more open if we focus on strengths, and you'll actually be empowered to take, oh, wow, I didn't quite know how I did that perhaps, or maybe I did it with one character, but I didn't do it with another character, or maybe, oh, wow, that scene was pretty vivid because I spent some more time on it. And I just have to apply that same technique to others. So it turns out, and we all have different strengths as writers. Some of us might be more, dialogue gurus, or some people might be more really like to do lyrical scenes. And some people are good at plot. Some people are good at, word level. But that's also what we're learning, right? So we're learning where our strengths are, and really, I think, to double down. And you really can I think that's why writing is difficult to teach and difficult to, kind of come up with a prescription, because you just take all your favorite writers, what they're good at, are good at being themselves to the nth degree, right? So they somehow came up with a way to really double down on their style, their voice. And voice is always that kind of elusive thing. Like, what's voice? Voice is you. Voice is you expressing your decision and your tastes from a book level to the sentence level. And it's just like, but again, you just need that feedback to say, did this land? Did this not? Like we however diligent we are about our writing, we can't know how our story is experienced in another brain unless someone reads it and gives us some feedback. And, as I think Liz emphasized, like, we're not looking for editorial feedback. And that's another thing you get a lot in workshops, is people kind of jump past the reader reaction to the editorial or the solution, right? You say, well, you should limit your number of characters, or have you tried it in this point of view? Or, what about doing this? And I think you need to add a new beginning, or whatever it happens to be. And those are well-intentioned, and they actually some of them might be useful. But I think what it does is it kind of shortchanges this kind of, I just want to hear what you experienced, and then I'll think about ways that I could possibly solve it. And I actually might ask you, hey, do you think if I did this, that would help? And then I'm open for it, right? So, but if I get solutions before I get that, I kind of like shut down and say, what are they doing? They're kind of taking my story or my art, and they're telling me what to do with it. And that's not, I've seen this a lot in workshops that I've experienced this. It's like, I'm the kind of guy, like, if my teacher said, oh, you should do it in a different point of view, I'll rewrite the whole book in that point of view. Or I might, dump the characters and rewrite. I've rewritten manuscripts like 10 times, literally. And it's just because I'm always looking for that elusive one solution. And I think it really isn't the solution, like Michelle said, nicely, is like, it's not out there, it's inside of you. And I think that's what we keep doing. And in the reading rounds, we really try to encourage that, not to offer solutions. I mean, you could ask for, hey, what about this? And, what about, I have these ideas, but we're really putting the writer in the driving seat and just giving them feedback. Like, we're not professional editors, but everybody's a valid reader. Every reader has a valid perspective because they experienced the book. And I just want to hear that. It's invaluable to get that. Oh, on page 10, they were like, it kicked in for them. Or on, you know, on this page, they just love that character. They're just all over this character, but they didn't really seem that interested in this other one. Like, why is that? And thinking about that really helps you think about the work and thinking about the experience of sharing it with other people. So we're kind of getting close to 8. We wanted to open it up for questions. So I wanted to just kind of, so after you do the reading round, the next step is to do a plan. So you really want to incorporate all the feedback and kind of process it and share it. And then like we would say, okay, well, what did you learn and what is your plan for the next revision? And this, we're also doing a revision of a revised opening. So for the people who are ready to do that, and we really encourage that, you know, that would be the last deliverable and that last, okay, everything you've learned, just try to rewrite the opening and see how that feels. So just try to keep up that momentum. And then as we go into the book revision lab, it's basically the same thing that happened the first year, but in kind of a heightened way in 6 months, where we say, okay, instead of looking at the concept of the story, we're going to analyze the story. We're going to look at the shape of the story, the beats, and just see what the holes are. And so we're kind of revisiting the story elements, like who's the protagonist, what do they need, what do they want, what are the stakes, what are the beats. So we have sessions on that, and we learn about that, and we kind of read that. And we also added a new element this year that went really well. We have a one-on-one story coach. So you do a narrative outline based on what you've written, share that with the story coach, and then they could talk to you about the overall structure of the book, which is kind of like, that's what the challenge is once you get into the revision stage, like to look at the big picture while you're also looking at the sentences. And I think some people like myself, it's kind of fun to rewrite sentences, but sometimes that is an ineffective way to get to complete your book. You have to take a step back and look at, is this story working? Is the structure working? So we have a module in the beginning of that to do the story coaching. And our story coaches are awesome, and they'll like give you some comp ideas to look at, and potentially some areas that they think that, hey, you know, have you thought about this? This might be another thing that might strengthen your stakes or the turning point at the middle of the book, and so forth. Then we go into revision. We focus on that process and best practices for that. Everything from the high level stuff to the like at the sentence level. We just did a nice seminar on increasing the emotional connection with your narrator, which we had a guest lecturer come in, and she did a great job, and people got a lot out of that. And then we do another reading round. So that reading round we do in the book revision lab is similar. We use a lot of the same structure and the same format, but then we're trying to get deeper, right? So we're not just looking at a first draft, we're looking at a revision and just trying to deepen our feedback, deepen the sense of, you know, and then the author might have some more questions, and the ultimate goal is to realize the potential of the book, whatever you want to do with it, you know, whether you want to you know, send it out to agents or self-publish or do a hybrid or somewhere in between. And that's kind of the core, you know, the core idea. I was trying to think if there's anything else we want to.
Well, since it's, already 8, maybe we should just open it up to questions. Maybe people have reviewed the website and have any specific questions about either program.
I'd love to hear who's doing novel or memoir.
Yeah, that was a question I
What are
wanted
y'all
to ask.
thinking?
I was interested in memoir. So that's what.
Great. Thanks, Cindy.
I was interested in memoir as well. And I guess my one question I had, I've taken a few workshops, and the format has usually been, you know, week by week you have a prompt, and also built in is reacting to the work of the other people in the workshop. So I get that you have this reading round where it's all concentrated, which is helpful. But does that mean that during the bulk of it, you get to focus on your writing, or do you also have a deliverable each week of commenting on? Because sometimes I found it difficult to keep up with 2 deliverables each week, you know?
I'll take that one. Yeah, we don't do that. We don't workshop each other's pages throughout the year, not until the full manuscript is due. And in fact, we try not to even tell any of our story or anything. We keep it, close to our, we feel like it's this little thing we have to protect and grow. And, we don't want anyone else to hear our story and say, that's stupid, or I don't find that interesting, or whatever, So we have all these, we do all these things together, but the one thing we don't do is share our writing until it's a full manuscript. And I can say, from someone who came from that typical workshop model, I originally found that difficult and maybe balked a little bit about it. I felt like I needed that accountability to submit, 25 pages every 2 weeks or whatever. But you soon get over that, and just the accountability of the group, checking in on Slack and meeting every 2 weeks and knowing that you have this deadline, looming in the future is enough for you to, keep the butt in the chair and get it done. So yeah, we don't do those workshopping in between until like September.
Okay, thanks, that's really helpful.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting too, because I've Heather, we had the pleasure to be in a workshop at one point a long time ago, and that was fun. But I think one of the things I think, especially for book writers, like there's a tendency when you're in a week-to-week or bi-weekly workshop or whatever, you tend to like, okay, that opening is not working yet, and then I got to keep working on the opening. Some people can do it within that context, but I think what we found is that if we really want that first draft to kind of just muscle through, get the entire story out, because then you've got you've got all the raw material you need to create a book, rather than an opening or a couple chapters or scenes. And I think it also builds the stamina, builds your endurance for a longer term project. And also I think, as Liz alluded, we, like the incubator idea is like, you have this little delicate thing. So, no one in our program is going to say, disparaging things, but, a family member, a relative, or, passerby at a party or whatever. It's just that people can awfully just say something. I've had people say something that it's kind of distracting, like it's set me off on a different path for years, because I'm so sensitive about, feedback. And I just think it's, we've just found if we can kind of put all that energy inside and then cultivate it. And then, with a revision lab, we're more open, and we're trying to, I'm kind of on the side of really super secrecy, and other people are not nearly like that. So we're trying to find a balance as a community to do that. And I think that's kind of, hopefully will evolve to like, what's the best thing. But the incubator does seem like it's so raw, and like any little thing could kind of, could damage that. But if we can keep that energy, and once you get that 50,000 words, it's like, this is something I can carry around now and I can really start to work with. So.
Marvi, what about you? Do you write novel or memoir?
I'm hoping a novel,
Okay.
young adult novel. Mm-hmm.
Oh, good. We have several young adult novelists in our group.
That's great.
I did have a question. When would applications be due?
We're saying the deadline is, the 15th, but,
Of December.
Of December, yeah. Sorry, December 15th. We'd like to get them in sooner rather than later. And the application it's really just to, gauge your commitment and as a writer, it's not, we just want to make sure that you're willing to, because especially a year-long program, we want writers who are going to stick with it. So that's really what the application is for. But sooner, just because I'm the one who deals with it, sooner than later, I would be preferred.
I was going to ask that, Liz. So Liz and Greg, you're the two who read the applications, right? So you've all basically met who you're sending your applications to. So hopefully that makes it less intimidating, because you've kind of heard their values of writing.
Right.
Yeah, and like, as Liz said, that we really, the commitment is super important. And also, I think being here, we can kind of tell what kind of people it's like almost like a self-selecting. So people who are interested in kind of community and maybe a little bit more, wow, that'd be kind of cool to help other people too. I think, and there's certain people that's not as interesting to them, but it's like I get as much satisfaction. Like, in some ways it's kind of a relief to me to like wow, I'd love to think about some other manuscripts, and because that kind of alleviates some of that, all that attention that I give to my own and like my doubts and like, is this any good? So, but if I can work on somebody else, so I think people who would actually enjoy helping other people and being in a community, and also kind of an openness to try different things. So I think going along with that best practices, it's like, you know, some people like the beats and a lot of people don't. I mean, to be honest, you know, some people, especially memoir writers, like my life isn't, you know, about, you know, has all these easy turning points. But I think if you're open to trying it and trying on these techniques, trying on the best practices, those are the people who really embrace the program and really have kind of some fun with it. Rather than the people who are like, okay, this is how I do it, you know. And like, I've had people like, I have a good friend, Celine, who was one of our peer artist leaders, and she's published 3 books in her career. And we hit it off about the positive psychology in another program. And she always wrote one certain way, you know, she didn't ever outline, she just kind of did her thing. And she was but she was open, and she came in and she's like, wow, this is kind of cool. She's like, I really like this part. I really like, and she's written 2 novels, or a novel. She actually read her novel within a much shorter time frame than she's used to. Yeah, there it is. It's really a wonderful book. That's her. It's called The Stark Beauty of, is it Last Things? Yeah, I got it up there too. But I think, you know, it's like this kind of a, you know, I think there's something about writing. It's like, I think I don't have it all figured out. And I think artists don't. I think we're kind of, you know, that's what artists do. They're like, I don't know, like, I got to figure it out. Let me try something. Let's try doing this. And I think, so we try not to be too prescriptive, but also pretty clear about what we think works. So it's kind of striking that balance. And so I think people just who kind of gravitate to us and excel, we don't try to, you know, compete with some of the big programs, and we're just trying to kind of spread the word and slowly gather the people who are kind of similar kind of style or kind of, you know, affinity for a community, who might want to be part of something and help it to grow. Because it's just more fun, as we've been saying. It's just real. I always say, like, I didn't know any writers in my area. I live in Renton, New Jersey, with near Michelle and Annabelle and Liz, and I didn't know any writers, and certainly no novelists or memoir writers. And then we kind of put up the bat signal, you know, and all of a sudden I'm friends with, you know, Lou Story, who's like this wonderful poet. He moved to Savannah, and he's like become a really good friend of mine. And I have friends in Portland. Vicky, she's this wonderful woman who wrote this great memoir about how her women friends, they hiked at the same place, you know, for years, like decades, and all the different things they went through in their life. It's kind of like a wild type book. But it just, I mean, you know, Annabelle said this too. So it's just like, it's just wonderful to have people like of so many different backgrounds, different parts of the country, different, you know, in every different way, but we have so much in common because we're crazy enough to want to write these books, you know. And I think you don't meet them in the, you know, and around, you know, at regular places. We really have to seek each other out and kind of keep telling each other it's worth it. You know, we got to keep doing. The world needs us. They might not know it, but they need us. And we certainly, as Michelle said, it's like, if I don't write, you know, I get anxious too. I actually get pretty like kind of down. And I was like, and this is a lot cheaper than other ways to keep, you know, it's just something I think artists, you know, if you're called to do this, you kind of have to do it, you know, and hopefully doing it together is more fun and effective, and, you know, we'll get more done. Does anybody have other questions? And Melissa or Carolina, I mean, I know Carolina, you can't talk, but maybe you can do something in the chat if you have any questions. I know you've been part of the programs before. Let's see.
And what are you guys wanting to write?
Maybe they're not.
If you can.
Yeah.
Melissa may not be there. Does everyone want to look at my manuscript again? See? See? I showed it to my husband. He like, was like, oh, great.
What's the title again? Can we hear the title?
This woman's work, a memoir of life after loss.
Hmm.
Yay.
Annabelle, do you have a title? Yours is due this week too, right?
Yes, literally on Thursday. My
Mine
title
too,
is The Work Trip.
Oh, I love
Great.
it.
Awesome. Did you share your title too, Michelle?
Oh, mine is Reunion, an immigrant family memoir for now.
Nice.
I still have
Nice.
some
A
time to write.
reunion. I like that. Yeah.
Yeah, it's got like a cool double meaning because in Spanish we use it for a lot more things. So yeah.
Very nice. Alrighty, great. So look at this. We're at 15 minutes early, so that's efficiency here. So does anybody else have any other questions? So Liz is always available. I'm sometimes available.
Don't
And,
bother him in the morning. He's writing now. Yeah, just send an email. I'll follow up tomorrow, of course, by email, but yeah, we can always meet again if anyone has any additional questions.
yeah, and so she'll send out the link to apply. And that's and then the website's, we've been updating it and trying to update it a little bit more, and it's pretty good, accurate, and I actually think we should pull some of these testimonials this wonderful panel did, so we can pop them up there too, because
Yeah.
these guys are really good expressing
Yeah.
the experience in a really nice way. I really appreciate you coming as well. So, all right. Well, thanks so much for coming.
Thank
Hopefully
you.
we'll
That
see you
was
guys in the programs and
very
let us know if you have
much.
any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Thank you. Have a good night, everyone.
Thank you, Marty.